At the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to decide, and my decision, and I'm telling Canadians before the election so they can vote on it.
The genie is coming out of the bottle. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got Danielle Smith bringing in the Alberta pension plan onto the platter here for everyone to feast on. This is the kryptonite to Mark Carney. He announced he wanted to mobilize Canada's pension funds, $1 trillion or $2 trillion, whatever it was in the UAE, even though he doesn't have access to the pension funds directly. Either way, this is a major problem for him going forward here into Christmas. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got Taiwan launches WTO complaint over Canadian steel tariffs. Remember, Mark Carney increased steel tariffs on other countries like Taiwan. Well, they don't like it. As Melissa pointing out, Taiwan, big time mad at Canada, has launched complaint with the World Trade Organization over these steel tariffs on imports on steel goods. Just another way Mark Carney's reaching out to other countries and building Canada strong. Speaking of building Canada strong, Michael Ma defecting and insulting all of his constituents who voted for him. Well, now they're protesting to the tune of 100 people outside his office. He thought this would go away. No, 37,000 people signed the petition for him to resign, and now we have 100 people out of his office every day. The sad thing is he's probably on a beach in China. Here's another look here.
Michael Moore! Michael Moore! Traitor! Michael Moore! Traitor!
Yep, he is a traitor. He's directly wrapped in with the CCP through many organizations that work with the United Front Work Department, who answers to the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. It's amazing. You look in the comments here, there's so many liberals saying, oh, there's only 11 of them, only 13 of them. Having a laugh. There's nothing to laugh about this, where democracy is being subverted here. These votes essentially don't matter if somebody jumps the floor. All week, liberals on X here have been bringing up examples of a liberal crossing the floor to the conservatives, years ago. But in none of those cases did it even matter in the grand scheme of things. There's no case where this switched a minority government into a majority. That's the big difference here. And often these floor crossers, there's one of them. Mark Carney's already got two now. He's bribing them, enticing them with something. So the fact he just wants to keep going and going to get a majority, this is not a democratic process. Mark Carney wants to steal a majority government. Speaking of Mark Carney, here we have a Prime Minister account announcing today, Prime Minister Carney spoke with President Macron. The leaders discussed this year's G7 achievements under Canada's leadership. That's right, Mark Carney announcing his achievements. I've got a list of them here. Very extensive. Well done, Mark Carney. Moving ahead in some world news, we need to touch on this. So in France, the farmers there are getting absolutely hammered. There's very high rates of farmers ending their own existence there, sadly. We've got French farmers protesting against the government. They brought all these mandates. It's very hard to make a living as a farmer. So yeah, once again, can't have music in there, but they've done this before. They did it again. They'll bring out the hay bales. They bring out all sorts of equipment. Where they spray manure all over the buildings and stuff. They're stacking up hay bales here. There's another one where they brought in a whole ton of potatoes and just dumped it all over downtown. We've got some rough stuff here, which YouTube doesn't like, but you can see a bunch of this gas here. And yeah, it gets pretty rowdy. So people fleeing from the tear gas, they're trying to get them out of there, but it's not working. This one here is saying 20,000 farmers. I mean, I don't know if 20,000, but it's a lot. Tractors came out first, and now there's more and more people joining this, and as you'll see, there's even more groups joining them. This one's coming from Brussels, absolute chaos. So obviously they're firing off something here, like tear gas or something. There's things burning here, like this is madness. More farmers bringing more tractors, Christmas tractors. It's quite the visual here. It's not just the farmers now. Now we have the paramedics showing up, ambulances. Okay, so we can mute that. We don't need to listen to that. But yeah, there's more support coming. And there was another video somewhere where the taxi drivers are also joining in. You got fire trucks here, all the emergency response showing up in support of the farmers. They're all calling for van der Leyen to step down. She wasn't even elected there. So Ursula von der Leyen here has been an absolute disaster. She's been in this position since 2019, president of the European Commission. But she is not elected by the people. She's chosen by the European Commission. She's making all these decisions, but she's not chosen by the people. She's corrupt. She needs to go. Everyone's trying to get rid of her. She's essentially the European Union's Mark Carney, but different. Moving ahead, we've got Ottawa Citizen with this one. What counts as Canadian? New procurement policy targets origin loophole. Procurement Minister Joël Lightbound announced first wave of Buy Canadian policy earlier this week. New rules for who qualifies as a Canadian supplier don't do enough to ensure federal government purchases domestic industries, observers say. Of course there's loopholes here. Mark Carney wants to make sure his Brookfield-connected American companies can make money off of Buy Canadian policy. Look at this comment here. My neighbor works at a hospital in BC. We were told to stop buying things directly from the US. Now we buy the exact same thing, except through a middleman, costing us more. This is Canada in a nutshell right here. Moving ahead, we got this bombshell. Alberta Next Panel recommends ditching the RCMP referendum to quit the Canada Pension Plan. Start mentioning those pension funds, and Mark Carney is no doubt getting a little bit worried. So Marty laying this out pretty simple here. Should we have our own pension plan for Alberta? Should we control our own immigration? Should we rein in the powers Ottawa took away from us? Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada and become independent? Should we maintain the status quo? One of the main ones is, should they have their own police force? This is kryptonite for Mark Carney. Having the pension funds leave throws a big monkey wrench into all his net zero plans.
A panel aimed at finding ways Alberta can strengthen its autonomy has released several recommendations, but some critics are questioning the results, saying they push issues many Albertans don't support. The CBC's Travis McEwen has the details.
So I would say the answer to the question would...
It's been more than 2 months since the Alberta Next Town Halls wrapped up. Chaired by the Premier, the tour hit 10 communities across the province. Some 5,000 Albertans weighed in on topics ranging from the creation of an Alberta police force and pension plan to immigration reform and Alberta sovereignty. And now the panel has released 7 recommendations for the Alberta government to consider moving forward. They include building institutions to reduce Alberta's dependence on Ottawa, providing a detailed Alberta pension plan proposal for Albertans to approve, looking at Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes, working to reform equalization and fiscal federalism, continuing to pursue an Alberta police service, holding a referendum for the province to exercise more control over immigration, and the last one calls for a referendum to constitutionally protect provincial jurisdiction from federal interference, like opting out of federal programs without losing associated funding, allowing the province to appoint King's Bench and Court of Appeal justices, and abolishing the unelected federal Senate.
They're going ahead with things that even their own polling shows they don't have support for. And they're going to continue to study some of the things that they still don't have support for, but they apparently want to continue to try to convince Albertans at taxpayers' expense, by the way.
So they spent millions of dollars on the Alberta Next panel. Now they're going to spend millions of dollars on referenda when Albertans have been very clear. They don't want an Alberta police service. They don't want an Alberta pension plan. They want the government to stop fighting and start focusing on cost of living, on jobs, on healthcare, and on education.
The panel's recommendations are based on feedback received at the town halls, in addition to survey results and professional polling.
What is Nenshi talking about? Alberta has the best jobs numbers in Canada, bar none. It's not even close. Nenshi is an absolute buffoon. I don't know why that guy is the leader of the party. Could they not find anyone better?
Travis McEwen, CBC News, Edmonton.
Alberta Next Panel has delivered its report, which includes 7 recommendations for the province. Those recommendations include holding referendums on a number of topics, including immigration, provincial jurisdiction, and an Alberta pension plan. The Alberta Next Panel held town hall meetings in 10 communities, including the capital of Edmonton.
So before we continue with this, let's look at the numbers. So the CPP investments here are a total of $777 billion as of September 2025. So $750 billion of money. Alberta's share of that is, well, it's debated. You might be wondering, how can it be debated? Well, simply, the government is trying to calculate based on the number of people. Alberta's calculated it based on the amount of money they've paid into it, which makes sense. If you go based off strictly the dollars that Albertans have paid into the pension plan over the years, they would get $334 billion of that 777, or about 53% of the total. Now, you might be wondering, $777 billion, 53%, 334, that's not 50%. That's based on old numbers using $634 billion, something like that. So it's basically half. They'd be taking half the pension fund. Obviously, Mark Carney doesn't want this money to go away because Mark Carney's very good at making money with other people's pension funds. His own words saying he was going to mobilize pension funds. We're still waiting to see how he's going to do that.
The Minister of Finance will lead a delegation of Canada's pension funds. $2 trillion of capital, which almost begins to sound significant in the UAE. $2 trillion in capital the Canadian pension funds.
Look how excited he is about mobilizing Canada's pension funds. Dirtbag. Now, how I hypothesize he's going to do this is he's getting people, or he has people already that are good friends that align with his values in these organizations that can vote for how money is spent in each one of these organizations. Whether it's the CPP, Ontario Pension Plan, CDPQ, PSP Investments, etc. Omers. Anita Nan's husband works for Omers, for example. We've already got multiple of these pension funds already invested in Mark Carney's very fund, the one he gets carried interest from, which is all this math here, which ends up being somewhere between, depending on if Brookfield gets a 15% return from a 10-year fund life of his Brookfield Catalytic Transition Fund here, which we can see there's multiple pension funds. This one's Ohio, there's Japan, Taiwan, etc., Korea. A 10-year return on that calculated carry interest, we know he gets 3% of the total after things are paid out, after investors get their cut, and then Brookfield gets their cut and their percentage. Carney would get $274 million, and depending on how well Brookfield invests this money, up to 25% returns annually, $748 million. If they extend this to 12 years, Carney could potentially get up to over $1 billion, $1.22 billion here. So Mark Carney doesn't want the pension funds to go anywhere because he needs to mobilize them somehow to get rich off them. I think he has been making allies for years in these pension funds because he's had a plan since he was back at the Goldman Sachs days. Maybe they all concocted this together. Maybe this is his baby he's been working on. But I mean, we already know that CDBQ, La Caisse here, is already invested in the Catalytic Transition Fund. IMCO's invested in the fund that he gets carried interest from. He gets some of the profits. The OTPP is also invested in his fund, as well as the PSP invested in his fund. And that shouldn't come as any surprise, as the PSP here, the Public Sector Pension Investment Board, Deborah K. Orita here, also worked at Goldman Sachs with Mark Carney during the same years, was a chief sustainability officer. I would guess that she is on board with his plan. So she's got a lot of power in this organization, the PSP. They're already invested in Mark Carney's fund. So I think he's trying to get more people on board here, or he's already got them on board.
Lead a delegation of Canada's pension funds.
Yeah, so he's definitely up to something here. So jumping back to the numbers here, if Alberta gets their full share of what they paid in, say it's $334 billion, that's going to take a huge chunk, a little less than half, 40-something% of the total funds. I have a feeling that throws a big monkey wrench into Mark Carney's plans here to pump the value of the Brookfield Catalytic Transition Fund, the one where he profits big off of. Now, if they go off these other rules where it goes by person, dividing it per person, then they only get 20 to 25% of those funds. As Trevor Toome says here, the province would really be entitled to between 20 and 25% of plan's assets. The report includes the findings of an independent advisory council with 4 of the 5 panelists picking Toome's method. So I'm sure there'll be a big fight over how much money gets divvied out because it's hundreds of billions of dollars difference.
It also incorporated 6 surveys, which had 6,000 to 12,000 respondents each, and included 2 questions on a provincial pension plan. The province listed 4 potential benefits of an APP and asked Albertans which ones they liked the most. Between July and October, 73% of respondents didn't agree with any of the potential benefits listed. Only 12% said it would improve retirement benefits, while 3% said it would reduce premiums. In the second question, 59% said the biggest risk of an APP would be mismanagement by the current or future governments.
The real problem is Mark Carney mismanaging this money. The best thing Albertans can do for themselves right now is get this money away from Mark Carney and the Liberals. I think Alberta should do this. I'm a proud born and raised Albertan. I live in British Columbia. This wouldn't be good for me as a British Columbian, but I think Alberta should do this. Just do whatever you can to stop the bleeding from the Liberals, Mark Carney. These guys are not in it for Canada. They're ripping us off.
Really raises questions about whether grassroots democracy is the point at all, or whether this is just about setting things up in such a way as to try to get the answers that you want. And if you don't get those answers, apparently that's not enough to stop recommendations for proceeding on a couple of matters that Albertans have given a pretty clear indication that they don't want.
Now, months late, on the Friday before Christmas, they're packaging up the results as though this was a real consultation and suggesting spending millions more dollars of Albertans' money on referenda, on keeping Albertans angry at Ottawa.
Premier Danielle Smith chaired the panel.
Why wouldn't you be angry at Ottawa? Look what they're doing to the province. It's year after year, decade after decade. Nothing's fair. Ottawa takes advantage of Alberta every single year. I mean, look at this from Juno News. Quebec poised to receive nearly half of all of the 2026-27 equalization payments. Freeloaders. They have the ability to make their own money for their own province, but they freeload off of Alberta's dirty oil and Saskatchewan's dirty uranium and then cry foul about running a pipeline through their province. This province is run by a bunch of hypocrites. Tax taxpayers will be shocked to learn that nearly $30 billion is set to be paid in federal equalization transfers for 2026-27, with Quebec poised to grab almost half of that. Unbelievable.
Alberta's government is exploring a new possibility, an Alberta Pension Plan, or APP for short. You might be wondering, what's in it for you? You see, in 2020, Alberta's government commissioned LifeWorks, an independent third-party consultant, to review the potential for an Alberta pension plan. Their analysis found many benefits for Albertans. That's because Alberta's young working population and more jobs with higher wages has resulted in Albertans over-contributing tens of billions into the CPP compared to the benefits we've received. This means that Albertans could save over $5 billion in just the first year if we moved from the CPP to an Alberta pension plan. These savings could increase each senior's monthly pension payment, or even provide a large bonus payment for seniors at retirement.
Yeah, but then how would Mark Carney send money over to gender-sensitive farming in Uganda? We couldn't fund those initiatives anymore.
Or these savings could be used to save Alberta workers up to $1,425 in payroll deductions every year. And if you're a business owner, small, medium, or large, an APP could reduce the premiums you pay each year by up to $1,425 per employee. Along with more money in your pocket, an APP would be more stable than the current CPP. An asset transfer of over $300 billion from the CPP to an APP would mean a more secure pension for Albertans.
Yeah, but then how would you pay for the gender-sensitive rice from Vietnam? Come on, guys.
And agreements would be developed to allow Albertans to move throughout Canada without impacting their pension benefits. To be clear, there will be no move to an Alberta pension plan unless Albertans approve it in a referendum. It's your pension, your choice.
I think this sticks the boots to Mark Carney. This forces his hand here. I bet he is sweating right now with this coming out. This blows up his grift. You won't hear about his grift on mainstream media because they don't tell the truth on there, or they don't do the research. Combination of both. Combine that with Pierre Poilievre's stance on pipelines.
When it comes to building a new oil pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast, Pierre Poilievre vows to get it done.
Nobody has a veto. Not under our Constitution.
Even over the objections of some First Nations communities.
And what if after those consultations, the answer is still no?
Well, the answer is given by the Prime Minister. And I'm running...
I'm saying if the Indigenous leaders say no.
That I will thank them for their input. And at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to decide. And my decision, and I'm telling Canadians before the election so they can vote on it, is I will approve a pipeline.
He's talking about another election here. So if Mark Carney is able to steal a majority, it's not going to bode well for Carney. Now, it might not matter because our system here is completely corrupt. He'll be able to unroll his agenda here for the next 3 years, although he won't be able to vote things through because the speaker counts as one vote. So he's going to need 2 more people to cross the floor. But if he does that, he might piss off Canadians. We already know from reports and surveys that Canadians don't like the idea of him getting a majority from people crossing the floor. And this comes not just from conservatives, but from liberals. People do not think that is ethical. But then again, Mark Carney is not an ethical man. He doesn't care.
The Canadian pension funds, they will come here next year early to deepen existing partnerships and develop new investment opportunities together.